Well, welcome to another edition of CHP Talks. I'm here today with CHP Leader Rod Taylor and Tanya Gaw. And Rod, please introduce our special guest for today. Welcome, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Tanya, today from Surrey. I met Tanya a few years ago, and she has been, since that time, we've gotten to know each other better, and she has been so active on so many fronts. It astonishes me how many different petitions she has promoted, the rallies, the things that she has done on many, many fronts. And we're going to talk about a couple of them today. But anyway, thank you, Tanya, for joining us, and just good to have you with us.
Yeah, thank you, Rod. It's a privilege to be here today. I look forward to the discussion.
Thanks.
So, Tanya, your organization is Action for Canada. How did that get started? What do you focus on at that?
Well, you know, it was really quite amazing. And as this has just sort of grown from, you know, me reaching out to about a dozen people, it's really morphed into something fantastic. And I just see the Lord's hand on it. You know, he had this planned 4 years ago. I didn't know I was being used for this purpose, but, you know, the day that Justin Trudeau took office, and that's something a lot of people will say when did you get involved? Well, it was pretty much the day he took office, and the legislation started pouring out, and there were so many concerns on multiple levels. And the big one at that time was the legalization of marijuana. You know, I had teenage kids and house full of teenagers all the time, you know, and I saw the effects it was having on some. So that's really what got me started. And, you know, I was brave enough to reach out to about a dozen friends on email and say, hey, you know, this is going on, and would you like to write a letter, and invited them to do so. And not long after that, you know, we had Bill C-16 and Motion M-103. And so I started to call it, hey, call to action, you know, everybody please get involved and write a letter to, you know, your MP or the Prime Minister or senators or your local government. And so it's just more from there to now we have around 55,000 people who are getting involved. And the greatest growth has come in the last 2 months. So we really launched, you know, our website, and the calls to action are just going amazing.
Wow.
There is an overlap, Tanya, with you and some other organizations, particularly the name is so close, Action for Canada and Act for Canada. Can you just tell us what the relationship is between you and that organization?
Right. So Act for Canada, Valerie Price is the founder of Act for Canada, and she's associated with Act for America with Bridget Gabriel. And their focus was dealing with the Islamization of the West. And Valerie had come to know Bridget and decided, hey, we need something like this in Canada. So as I was going through call to action campaign, I ended up doing some petitions. I'd heard about Valerie. I reached out to her. And, you know, a lot of the organizations I am now dealing with are a one-issue organization, you know, whether it's abortion and family life issues, or whether it was the marijuana issue or the Islam, whatever it happened to be. I started reaching out to these organization leaders, and Valerie was one of them. And we just became fast friends. And she is actually one of the directors with Action for Canada. So she saw the vision. We thought, well, there's not really a better name than Action for Canada. Act for Canada, you know, is like many organizations, they're informing people about something that's important to them that's going on. Action for Canada covers all of those issues. We want to be an umbrella organization and bring all those groups together, because no matter what it is you're dealing with, that issue is important to the majority of Canadians. And so that's how this developed, and where Action for Canada and how Act for Canada sort of came together, and we decided on that name.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yes, but we are two different organizations for sure.
Okay. So you mentioned many issues, and one issue that we feel is particularly timely, particularly important, and not just important in the immediate sense, but for the long term, and not just for people's pocketbooks, but for people's lives, is the conversion therapy ban, and that's being advanced federally. And what have you been doing on that? What's your
Yeah, this one is huge. It's a critical issue. I first learned about the conversion therapy ban December in 2018. And an NDP MP by the name of Sherry Benson had put forward an e-petition, which is a government online petition, and she was asking for the ban of prohibiting parents from being able to take their child to therapy if they were questioning their gender or sexual orientation. And it was so invasive that it went so far as to say, you're not permitted to do it in Canada. You can't go to another country to take your child for therapy. And if you do, we're going to make it a criminal offense. So immediately I started to create a counter e-petition by February. And I was reaching out to all kinds of candidates in the Conservative Party saying, you know, will you support this e-petition? Because you need an MP to sponsor it. So February 1st comes and goes. Sherry Benson ends up submitting her to the House, to the Parliament House, and we had over 18,000 signatures on it. So in the meantime, I'm still trying to get approval, and Brad Trost ended up saying, yes, I will sponsor that petition. Okay. So throughout March, I got it approved through Parliament, and unfortunately, because Andrew Scheer quite nastily had removed Brad Trost from being permitted to run in the Conservative Party again, if he had sponsored that petition, it would have fallen flat because he wouldn't be there to represent it as of the fall of 2019 and after the election. So at the beginning of April, he declined and he pulled out of it. And I was just begging MPs to take this on because I had a vision then of how critical this was and how invasive it was and what a violation it was of our charter rights and freedoms, freedom of speech, you know, parental rights. It's just a multi-leveled attack. It's a tremendous attack against people of faith and the church itself. So we went through the summer, the election came and gone, and in the meantime, and when with Sherry Benson's petition, the Liberals had said, we're not going to entertain that. It needs to be done at the provincial or municipal level. Soon comes the summer, and Christopher Wells gets funding from the government to create this manual that was directly going to the municipalities, instructing them on how to ban conversion therapy at the municipal level. They said, the government said, you're closest to the people, so we're going to use the municipalities to get this going. And sure enough, wherever there were LGBTQ activists within the city councils or municipalities, or activists pressing the cities and municipalities, one after another city, we start hearing about these bans taking place. And Alberta has been really, really hit hard. Yeah. As that was going on, the Senate in the fall brings Bill S-202. And it was a homosexual senator. He's supposed to have retired February 1st, and he tables this motion. Very it's not common that a senator would actually present legislation. So that one's still on the go. I believe it's going into third reading. And, you know, it was supposed to be a soft approach to this, sort of fool people. Oh, this is just going about conversion therapy. If you advertise that you're going to provide counseling, well, we're going to come after you. That was just a soft run. The Liberals said that they'd be presenting a conversion therapy ban as well. And now, as of March, they've tabled their legislation, and sure enough, it is extreme and hard-hitting. It again goes back to what they declined to support last year with Sherry Benson. It says that you cannot take your child for therapy unless, like, no therapy that would dissuade them from pursuing a homosexual or trans lifestyle. The only ones that are permitted, that the only counseling you're permitted to bring your child to is if you are going to support them. Any counselor that would support them going towards puberty blockers, and of course, eventually that would entail sex reassignment surgery, wherein healthy, very important body parts are being removed. They're sterilizing children through the hormone blockers. So it's really, really devastating. It's heartbreaking to see that this is going on, and it's very concerning. And just, I know I'm rambling on here, but the biggest concern as well is that the conversion therapy, first of all, using that term is very deceptive because it does not exist in Canada. conversion therapy consisted of people who were receiving electroshock therapy. They were being castrated, they were being institutionalized, and over 40 years ago, we agreed that that was harmful, it was not appropriate, and it was banned 40 years ago. The reason they're using the term conversion therapy now is because it has that sort of stigma, and therefore they are, how do I say, they're victimizing individuals, and it's not even going on, and they have no proof that any of that is going on in Canada. So
I think we should maybe just take one step back for just a second and say, in terms of these conversion therapy bans, just for anyone who's maybe watching and not familiar with some of these terms and concepts, the idea of a converting from one gender to another, and you've already pointed that out, but it's being supported in one direction. But if someone realizes that they've made a mistake, they've wanted to live as the opposite sex, now they want to go back to their sex at birth. It's going back to their sex at birth that's being criminalized in a sense, or at least supporting someone through that process.
Yeah, it is. And it because it's not just directed at, the main direction is at children and parents, but it has also included adults. And as we know, if you go onto Google and Google detransitioning, thousands of people are realizing this was a mistake. And for people who transition, they say that this is all about compassion and doing something for these children that are confused and these adults are confused, because it's so cruel if you don't support this. It's cruel to support it, because the statistics are that for people who have transitioned, they have a 19 times higher risk of suicide. That's guaranteed. So these MPs, these senators, they're signing a death warrant. These municipalities and city councillors, 19 times higher risk of death if you go ahead and transition. And the problem is that for over 80%, 80 to 90% of children who are questioning their gender, if they're left to move through those formative years, they actually rely on their biological sex. That's the lifestyle, a heterosexual lifestyle that they choose. And so why are we doing this? To go on a bigger scale of how this is coming about and why it's become such a big issue is that several years ago, the UN mandated that member nations embrace and support and institute a comprehensive sexuality education system. And within that, they are sexualizing children at the earliest age possible, 3 years old, preschool. They're teaching them things that are so inappropriate, not age appropriate. The transgender, they have a LGBTQ czar at the UN, and there's a 5-point mandate, that each member nation was instructed to comply to, and that include decriminalize sodomy, go after the churches, confuse children at the youngest age possible. Trudeau has already done all of those things. First year that he got in, he lowered the age of anal sex from 18 to 16 years old. It's so vile. So now what they've done is everybody as well was to change their human rights code to include no discrimination against gender identity and gender expression. Once they did that, the second level was to introduce this comprehensive sexual education into the school system. So now if you go to say, I don't want my kids being taught this, they're saying, oh, no. Based on the Human Rights Code, you're not allowed to discriminate against this minority, this special interest group, because it's in the Human Rights Code. So that was their first line of attack. Then they've come through and they've introduced this very aggressive LGBTQ agenda within the schools. They say it was anti-bullying, but we already have the best anti-bullying, curriculum and support systems in place at our schools. And bullying goes on for everybody, not just the LGBTQ. Both my kids got bullied extensively, and it was really hard on them, especially my daughter. So don't tell me that they've cornered the market on this kind of harm, right? Everybody is experiencing this. But what it did was it was a soft, victimized approach in order to get acceptance of this curriculum. Now that they've got kids so confused, it's called a social contagion because it was like goth in the days, or cutting. You know, children and youth go through a time when they're confused about themselves and they start doing crazy things. But the consequences of the promotion of this sexual agenda in the schools is causing children and youth to question biologically who they are. We've never seen anything like this. So now that they've got all their kids confused, that was the second level. Now the government is coming in where they got them right where they wanted them and what was planned. And they're saying, now that we've got them here, don't you dare think to go and take your child for counseling. And you as a parent, it goes this aggressive, you as a parent are not yourself able to tell your child, you're confused, you'll grow through this, don't worry about it, you know what, we're going to work together through this. A parent can be put in jail for 5 years if they don't counsel that child towards transitioning.
Tanya, in the last couple of months, you have hosted several Zoom calls across the country with leaders, with pastors, people involved in rescuing those who want to escape an unhappy lifestyle.
Right.
And there's a lot of concern. I know we've seen it in different organizations. Last week we had Pastor Kevin Kavanaugh on representing One Accord and the work that they've been doing. There are many organizations that are, and of course people that are concerned about this. What would you recommend? I know we're going to end up directing people to your website as well. But what is, for the person listening to this call who either hasn't heard about it before or is newly concerned or passionate about this issue and they desperately want to make a difference, what would you recommend that they would do to help at least raise awareness and hopefully wake up some of the politicians that are just falling into line and blindly going down this path, not knowing where it's going to lead?
Right. It's a very good question, Rod. I appreciate that. And, you know, just to say there's a lot of politicians who voted for Bill C-16 who thought they were doing a compassionate thing. They thought they were doing the right thing. And afterwards, they realized the consequences of that. And the fear is that many MPs are going to fall for the victimization of these poor trans people who have been not treated fairly and vote in favor of this without knowing the details. So I really would encourage people to come on to Action for Canada. That's Action with number 4, actionforcanada.com, and go down into one of the drop links and it will say political LGBTQ. And within there, I've got articles, resources, and calls to actions that are growing, that are addressing this problem. I will be doing one on Bill C-8, the current one that the federal government has just tabled, and we will be doing a call to action on this. So in the meantime, though, go in. I've got great resources, and get involved with your municipality. I've got a couple of letters that are on there that are you can just go in and print them and send them to your mayors and city councilors, because they really have been targeting mayors and city councilors and feeding them a one-sided conversation, and they need to hear the other side. They need to hear how invasive this is, how harmful it is, and that the municipalities, mayors and city councilors should be worrying about infrastructure. They are not social justice warriors, and we did not, elect them to be social justice warriors. We elected them to take care of the city and the roads, and that's their job. So let's stick with that. Then I would reach out to MLAs and MPs. Whatever letters that you find are helpful on there, copy and paste them into your email. Use them like they're your own. I don't, that's what this is all about. Don't worry about my name being on anything. You take those letters and use them as far and wide as you can. So that's what I would encourage people to do at this point.
Okay. Well, thanks so much for that. I'm just wondering, is there sort of a final thought, something that you want to leave with our viewers, and Rod, for you as well?
Well, I just want to thank you guys for the opportunity to come on today and talk about Action for Canada. I'm a huge supporter of the Christian Heritage Party. You know, we went through the last election, and there was the People's Party of Canada and the Christian Heritage Party, and you're both doing amazing work. But one thing I would like to ask people to do, we know that the Conservative Party is having a leadership election, but the party has really gone astray. And so I think that moving into the future, we need to look at the policies that, a party like the Christian Heritage Party has to offer, because they are sound, they are moral, they are everlasting. They would be for the best of this country fiscally and socially. I hate to use that word socially, because I think it's just really a moral issue. But partnering up with organizations like yourself, getting the word out. I would love as many people as possible to join Action for Canada, because as we said earlier, I touch on a lot of different issues. I'm addressing COVID right now. I'm addressing these tax grabs that the government is doing. But the more people that we have writing and responding on the multiple issues, the more the government is going to hear that we are not happy with the status quo, and that we expect that, it was a small minority that have been able within the LGBTQ to turn our country upside down on some very important issues. So we're the silent majority. And I'm saying, I want to give you your voice. So come on to Action for Canada, join us, and let's work together on this.
Well, thank you very much, Tanya. It's great to have you in the trenches with us, and for the shout out to us regarding our common shared values. And our country has been turned upside down. We want to turn it right side up. And it's time that those who care about our children, that care about the future of this country, join together. And I would encourage anyone listening to this call to go to Action for Canada, the website, and see all the different, we've talked a lot about the conversion therapy ban, but there's a number of other very important topics. And if you can keep up with this lady, get on her mailing list, because she keeps things moving, and she will not give you rest. She doesn't give her MLA any rest. She makes sure that the MLA and the MP and the Prime Minister and the Attorney General are all aware that Action for Canada wants to see good policies enacted, and will hold their feet to the fire if they go in the wrong direction. So thank you, Tanya, so much for what you're doing and continuing to do. Keep up the good work. Don't lose heart. You are making a difference.
Thanks, Rod. Thanks so much.
Well, thanks to both of you. This has been a good and important conversation on real topics of lasting value. And thank you to everyone who is watching. We appreciate what you will be doing about all of these items in the future, and for your concern. And God bless you all. We hope to see you next week for another edition of CHP Talks.